I have held this post for 11 years. Before me, Warden Caladovan held it for 19. Before her, Warden Peth Arlen for 22. The line goes back further than any single life can trace, back through names carved into the station's intake corridor. One per term, all the way to the first warden, whose name I have read so many times I sometimes feel I know her. Her name was Solon Verath. She took the post in the 43rd year after the Verath Recurrence Authority first filed its claim on Sol System, and she wrote in her opening log entry, "They will come back. The charter says they may, so we will be here when they do." 780,000 years later, they came back. I was running the morning calibration on the long-range array when the contact signature appeared at the outer boundary. One vessel, Verath hull configuration, moving inbound at a survey approach vector. My hands did not shake. I had run the contingency exactly 412 times in my 11 years at this post. Every warden runs it. Every warden knows the Verath hull signature the way they know the shape of their own palm. I keyed the station-wide address and said, in the same tone I would use to report a dust accumulation in the secondary relay coil, "Recurrence contact at outer boundary. All wardens to designated positions. This is not a drill." Then I opened the recurrence log. It is the oldest continuous document in human custody. The original entries are kept under sealed archival conditions in the station's core vault. Actual physical pages, the material from which they were made long since catalogued and identified as a polymer compound that does not degrade in vacuum. Solon Verath's handwriting is small and precise. She logged the Verath contact, the charter terms, the filing date, and the calculated return window. Then she wrote, "Entry 1 of 1," and she left the resolution column blank. I was about to fill it in. The Verath vessel cleared the outer boundary at standard survey speed and broadcast its credentials on the charter frequency. A compressed packet containing the recurrence charter reference number, the Verath Recurrence Authority seal, and a formal re-entry notification addressed to the Sol System's registered occupant, if any. This is what the charter required. They were following procedure, right up to the end. I responded on the same frequency. I gave my name and post designation. I told them that Sol System had a registered occupant. I told them to hold position and await formal transmission. There was a pause of 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I have always imagined that pause as the moment a Verath survey officer, trained on the expectation of silence, hears a voice answer and does not immediately know what to do with it. The charter had a protocol for that silence. It did not, apparently, have a protocol for this. When they responded, the voice was precise and controlled. I will give them that. The officer identified himself as Survey Director Verath Khan Soth, acting under authority of the Recurrence Charter, filed in the 43rd year of what his civilization's calendar called the Verath Consolidation Era. He stated that the charter granted the Verath Recurrence Authority the right of re-entry to Sol System on a fixed 780,000-year cycle, and that they were here to exercise that right. I told him I understood. I told him I had the charter on file. I had, in fact, 17 physical copies of it in the station vault, cross-referenced against 6 independent legal commentary archives assembled over the preceding 400,000 years. I told him I was transmitting the Sol System's formal response now. The transmission took 40 seconds to send. It contained 3 things. The first was the Sol System's continuous habitation and governance record, 780,000 years of unbroken documented occupancy, logged quarterly, in the format the Verath Recurrence Charter itself specified for occupied system notification. Every quarter, for 780,000 years, the warden of this station had filed an occupancy report on the charter frequency into the designated archive node. 4 warden terms worth of reports had received no acknowledgement. The remaining terms reports had received automated receipt confirmations from a Verath archive relay that, based on our records, had been running on maintenance-only power for approximately 600,000 years. We had filed anyway. The charter required it. We filed. The second thing in the transmission was the population and governance summary. 47 settled systems, 91 billion people, 11 independent governance bodies operating under a unified interstellar compact. This was not a contested figure. It was a census. The third thing was Article 6 of the Verath Recurrence Charter itself, subsection 3, paragraph 2. which the Verath legal body had written into the document 780,000 years ago, and which read, in direct translation, any system achieving recognized interstellar civilization status at any point within the active recurrence cycle shall be considered a sovereign productive system, and the re-entry right shall be permanently voided at the moment that status is achieved and formally documented. Sol system had achieved interstellar civilization status, by the Verath's own definition, in the Verath's own language, using the Verath's own thresholds, in the year 71,422 of the recurrence cycle. The re-entry right had been void for 708,578 years before the Verath vessel crossed our outer boundary this morning. I sat in my chair and I looked at the long-range display, one vessel, alone at the edge of a system it no longer had any legal right to enter, under a charter whose voiding clause its own architects had written. I thought about Solon Verath's handwriting. I thought about the names in the intake corridor. I thought about what it means to hold a post that no one will ever say needed holding, because by the time anyone came to test it, the test had already been answered centuries before the tester arrived. Survey Director Verath Soth was quiet for a long time after the transmission completed. When he responded, his voice had changed in a way I recognized. Not broken, not frightened, but recalibrated. The sound of a mind rearranging itself around a new and permanent fact. He asked how long we had known. I told him we had known since year 71,422 of the recurrence cycle, when the Sol system's third interstellar governance compact was ratified, triggering the Article 6 threshold. The warden at that time had filed a formal Article 6 notification to the Verath archive relay on the charter frequency the following morning. The automated receipt confirmation arrived 6 days later. He asked if we had always expected them to come anyway. I said yes. He did not ask why we had maintained the post regardless. I think he understood by then. You hold the post because the charter requires a documented occupant. You hold it because the filing has to be continuous, or the record has a gap, and a gap is an argument. You hold it because the names of the people who held it before you are carved into the corridor wall, and because the resolution column in the first log entry has been blank for 780,000 years, and someone has to be here to fill it in. The dissolution certificate was a standard Verath legal form. I had assembled it 412 times in practice. I transmitted it to the Verath vessel. Survey Director Verath Soth read it, which I know because his next transmission was delayed by 23 minutes, long enough to read it carefully, and then to read it again. He countersigned it. He said nothing further. The Verath vessel came to a full stop at its current position for 7 minutes, then began a slow turn back toward the outer boundary. I tracked it on the long-range array until it cleared the heliopause, and its signature faded into background radiation. Then I closed the tracking window. I opened the recurrence log to the first entry. Solon Verath's handwriting, 780,000 years old, still small and precise. They will come back. The charter says they may. So we will be here when they do. I filled in the resolution column. I wrote the date, the survey director's name, the article invoked, and the year the right had voided. I noted that the dissolution certificate had been countersigned, and that no shots had been fired. I noted that the post would now be formally closed, the charter reference archived, and the station repurposed per standing protocol. Then I wrote, Entry 1 of 1, resolved. I closed the log. I sat for a while in the quiet of the station, listening to the low hum of the array, looking at the names in the corridor through the open hatch. 11 years at this post, and in the end, the work was exactly what Solon Verath said it would be. We were here when they came. That was all it ever needed to be.